Welcome back to the story of me and you, the place where truth meets wonder, and the silence of the cosmos speaks to the human heart. Today, we begin a journey like no other, one that transcends space, science, and soul. You're not just watching this, you're part of it. Because this isn't just a story about Mars, it's a story about us, about what we believe, about how we seek the extraordinary, hidden in the quiet corners of the universe. It started like most things do, with a question, half whispered, in a dark room, behind the glow of a computer screen. October 2022. A user by the name UFOVNI 2012, buried in a late-night rabbit hole of NASA image archives, paused his scrolling. His eyes locked on a particular satellite image taken by Mars Global Surveyor on October 16, 2000. What he saw would echo far beyond that moment. There, in the dusty red stretch of Medusae Fossae, something didn't belong. It was triangular, clean, geometric, eerily intentional, nearly 600 feet wide, like a craft, like a message, like a monument to something forgotten. The man blinked twice, enlarged the image, then again, it didn't fade. "Why is this here?" he muttered, "and who left it?" Medusae Fossae is a haunting place, even by Martian standards. Spanning over 5,500 kilometers near the equator, it's a geological riddle. Windswept ridges, silent valleys, an ancient sea of sediment shaped by time, not hands. And yet, this triangle, half buried in Martian sand, looked made, not just formed. People scoffed. "It's pareidolia," one skeptic said. "Your brain sees patterns where there are none." But hearts don't respond to logic. They respond to feeling. In this triangle, it felt like a whisper in the vacuum. A calling card. A memory. We found him. The man behind the username, real name, Javier Ortiz, a retired IT technician from San Antonio, Texas. His voice trembled as he spoke to us on a Zoom call, his eyes darting from the screen to the photo on his wall. "I didn't mean to find it," he confessed, "but I couldn't unsee it. It felt like it wanted to be seen." What makes something real? Is it measurement, evidence, or the way it moves something inside us? Awakens the ancient part of the soul that still looks up at the stars and asks, who else is out there? In this triangle, perhaps, lies more than just rock and shadow. Perhaps it's the beginning of a revelation. In the quiet hum of his home office, Javier Ortiz stared for hours at the image. He had printed it out on glossy paper and taped it above his desk. The triangle. The fan-like skid marks. The silence around it. He wasn't the only one who had seen the image by now, but few were willing to believe it meant anything. Even fewer dared to say what he whispered to himself each night. What if it didn't crash? What if it landed? From a geological standpoint, the Medusae Fossae formation is riddled with natural patterns, ridges, valleys, and wind-eroded scars. But what struck Javier most was not just the triangle's shape, but its context. The terrain around it was oddly disturbed, as if something massive had interacted with the surface in a controlled, purposeful way. He reached out to an old acquaintance, Dr. Linh Vo, a Vietnamese-American planetary geologist at UC Berkeley, known for her critical but open-minded approach. After some hesitation, she agreed to examine the high-res scans Javier had compiled. Her voice was cautious but curious during their second call. "There's something unusual here," she admitted, eyes flicking between her notes and the screen. "I can't say it's artificial, but the symmetry in that impact pattern, it's not typical." She paused, then added quietly, "If this was a landing, it was deliberate, calculated, and done long ago." The theory sparked fire in online circles. Some saw it as validation, others as dangerous speculation. Was this triangle a ship, a beacon, a probe from a long-lost civilization? Theories spiraled, each more dramatic than the last. But deep within the noise, a small, consistent voice persisted. What if we're not looking at wreckage, but at arrival? Javier didn't need to believe every wild theory. He just needed to know that someone else saw it too. We have been trained to think that discovery comes from facts alone, but sometimes it starts with a feeling, a sense that something isn't what it seems. In that Martian dust, among the echo of ancient winds, a shape whispers not of tragedy, but of arrival. The next question isn't, what is it? It's, why here? Martian soil is ancient. And in Medusae Fossae, it feels almost sacred. This sprawling terrain, stretching over 5,500 kilometers along Mars's equator, is one of the most mysterious regions in the solar system. Even NASA, after decades of mapping, still calls it a geological enigma. It's a graveyard of dust, volcanic ash, and unknown forces. But for Javier and Dr. Lin, this wasn't just geology, it was context. And perhaps it was intent. Dr. Lin pulled up elevation models, density maps, and atmospheric erosion data from the last 20 years. One pattern stood out. The triangle object, if it was a ship, appeared to have landed in one of the most stable, wind-shielded zones of the entire formation. This wasn't random, she murmured, pointing to the screen. If I were navigating from space and needed a natural cradle to hide or protect something, this would be it. There was more. Medusae fossae is rich in volcanic glass and porous rock, materials that distort radar and make underground imaging almost impossible. Some scientists believe the region might contain vast hollow pockets beneath the surface. What if something wanted to stay hidden? Javier asked. Dr. Lin didn't answer immediately. But her silence was louder than words. Their research caught attention, not from mainstream science, but from those who'd been watching Medusae fossae for decades. Rogue astronomers, UFO archivists, even a former ESA technician named Eric Malmstrom who emailed them directly. I worked Mars data for 14 years. We always knew there was something odd about that ridgeline, but the official line was, "Don't ask too many questions." He sent them a file. It was redacted in parts, but the metadata told its own story. Coordinates, seismic pings, a brief note, anomalous subsurface structure, depth unknown. Was the triangle object a survivor of a crash, or a traveler that chose the perfect shelter? Was Medusae fossae merely dust and wind, or a vault quietly holding what history forgot? Every answer uncovered only deepened the mystery. And now, Javier and Dr. Lin had to face the hardest question of all. If something was here, was it still here? It arrived in an unmarked zip file through a temporary encrypted link. No subject, no signature. Just a message. You didn't get this from me. Play the audio file last. Inside were a series of raw data logs, seismographic readings, subsurface radar charts, and one lone audio clip labeled simply Mars_sig_sequence-3.wav. The sender didn't need to be named. Javier and Dr. Lin both knew this came from someone on the inside. Someone who had seen what wasn't meant to be seen. The radar charts were unlike anything Lin had ever seen. Below the triangle's supposed location was a series of repeating shapes, symmetrical, compartmentalized, like vaults or chambers. What natural formation does this? Lin whispered, more to herself than to Javier. He didn't answer. He couldn't. They ran the audio file. At first it was static, harsh, cold. Then a low frequency emerged, rhythmic, deliberate, a pulse, not mechanical, not geological. Something in it resembled a pattern. 4 tones, silence. Then 4 again, like a knock, like a code. Lin sat back slowly, her face pale. This is not wind, not an echo. Something made this. They brought in Mark Pena, a cryptographic analyst and former NSA audio technician, now working with open source anomaly groups. Mark wasn't a believer, he was a skeptic. That's what made his reaction so chilling. I've analyzed coded transmissions in 32 languages and a dozen signal systems, he said, and I'll tell you this, that's not noise, that's communication. He paused, then added, and it's repeating, every 19 hours. There was no known Martian weather cycle with such precision, no geological shift that moved in perfect intervals. Something was either still alive, or something was still functioning. Javier stared at the screen, heart pounding. We thought we were alone on Mars, he murmured. Lin looked up. Maybe we still are, she replied. But maybe something else wasn't. This wasn't just about a ship, or a crash, or even a landing anymore. This was about response, something beneath the Martian surface sending signals steady and unbroken. Not noise, not memory, a presence. And the next question was no longer, what is it? It was, who is answering? The audio signal looped every 19 hours. Always the same sequence, always the same 4 tones. Mark Pena kept analyzing it, layering filters, checking for distortion or echoes. Then he stumbled upon something unusual. A frequency overlap. Buried under the Martian transmission was another signal, fainter and older, a distress call from Earth. The file was labeled stn-b32.log. Mark traced it back to a decommissioned NASA outpost in the Atacama Desert, Chile, once part of a now-defunct program called Project Cavern. Its purpose? To detect ultra-low frequency signals from space, especially those with unexplained origins. B-32 was one of the deep field stations, Mark explained. They weren't just listening to the stars. They were watching for what the stars returned. Javier and Dr. Lin went through the station's declassified maintenance logs. Most were dry and technical, except for one entry, dated June 8, 2001, filed by a technician named Omar Reyes. The log read, picked up low rhythmic tones from coordinates 5, 2 degree S, 213, 1 degree E, Mars. First impulse recorded at 0300 UTC, equipment registered repeating phase shift. Requesting analysis team review, logged for transmission. That transmission never sent. They tried to locate Omar, but his employment record ended in 2002. No forwarding address, no online footprint. It was as if he vanished. Mark managed to contact one of his former colleagues, a retired NASA field engineer named Deborah Whitehall, now living in Arizona. When asked about Omar, her voice fell. Omar was sharp, quiet, kept to himself, she recalled. But after June 2001, he changed. Said he heard something not meant for us. He tried to warn someone. And then he just disappeared. The signal that Omar detected was identical to the one buried in the Martian audio file. The same 4 pulses. The same rhythm. 2 decades ago, someone had heard the arrival. And someone had tried to silence it. What happens when knowledge is buried? Not by time, but by choice. When those who listen are told to stop hearing? Javier, Lin, and Mark now stood at the threshold of something larger than anomaly. This wasn't about a sound anymore. It was about a decision, one made long ago by someone who believed humanity wasn't ready to know. By now, the team was no longer working in theory. Mark had isolated the core signal, a consistent emission originating precisely beneath the triangular object in Medusae Fossae. Coordinates 5, 2 degree S, 213, 1 degree E. Depth 32 meters. This isn't natural, Lin said quietly. It's layered, engineered, like a pulse being routed through something. Something built. Javier stared at the readings. Beneath miles of Martian dust and compressed volcanic ash, the sensors suggested a hollow chamber. Elliptical, 18 meters wide. There was no collapse, no instability, just stillness, as if it was waiting. They contacted a small European private space research firm, Vetra Dynamics, known for its underground Mars mapping tech. With enough funding and a tight-lipped agreement, Vetra agreed to use one of their low-impact seismic probes in the region, an autonomous tunneling bot that could reach the depth without detection from above. 6 weeks later, the probe arrived. It burrowed quietly, inch by inch, transmitting seismic readings and visual feedback. Then, on Sol 7 of the mission, it stopped, not due to malfunction, but because it reached something solid. A structure, smooth, seamless. Material not recognized in any Martian mineral database. It wasn't rock, it wasn't metal, it was something else. Mark zoomed in on the probe's scan. The surface showed geometric etching, like grooves carved with mathematical precision, forming repeating arcs and nested spirals. It's a language, he whispered, or a lock. Then something happened. The moment the probe's camera reached full focus on the markings, the pulse signal changed. It added a 5th tone. Slightly longer? Resonant? Mark replayed the waveform over and over. It responded, Lin said, her voice trembling. Whatever this is, it knows we're here. In the Martian silence, they had knocked, and now the vault had answered. But no one yet knew if the answer was invitation or warning. Whatever lay beneath Medusae Fossae, it was not just a relic. It was active. It was aware. And it was listening. The 5th tone changed everything. It wasn't just a shift in sound, it was intent. A deliberate modulation, as if saying, I see you. Javier, Lin, and Mark stared at the waveform in silence. The hum in the background seemed louder now, like a breath between the stars. Something wanted them to hear. And maybe something waited for a reply. Lin was the first to speak. We have to respond. she said. If we don't, we're just ghosts in the dark. We've come this far. We owe it to ourselves, to our species, to say, we're here too. Mark hesitated. His voice was firm. And what if it's a trap, a lure? We've seen enough history to know not every light is a welcome sign. The debate wasn't just scientific, it was philosophical. Do we speak, knowing it may change everything? Or do we stay silent, and perhaps lose the moment forever? Javier turned to a folder he had kept unopened for months. Omar Reyes' final notes, recovered from an old data drive. In shaky handwriting, one phrase stood out. Fear is the oldest language of survival. But so is hope. They made the decision. Not through consensus, but through conviction. They would respond. Mark worked overnight to create a sound pattern mimicking the pulse's frequency, but reversed, like a mirror. Lynn added mathematical constants, pi, the golden ratio, Fibonacci sequences, universal symbols of intelligence. Javier recorded a final tone, human-made, a single note from a cello, raw, imperfect, beautiful. It should know we're not machines, he said. It should hear a soul. At 3 o'clock UTC, they transmitted the reply. Then, nothing. No response for minutes, then hours. But just before dawn at Vetra Dynamics monitoring station, something returned. Not tones, not pulses, a light, a faint glimmer captured by orbiting infrared cameras, emerging from beneath the sand, exactly where the triangle lay. In the stillness of an alien world, a conversation had begun. Not with words, not with faces, but with light, with rhythm, with the courage to listen, and the heart to answer. What would happen next? No one could say. But they had spoken, and now they were being heard. The light wasn't bright. It shimmered faintly like a heartbeat pulsing beneath the sand. Javier, Lynn, and Mark watched the thermal feeds in silence. The glow was expanding, not upward, but inward, forming a ring of heat under the surface. Something wasn't just reacting. It was awakening. At 5:12 UTC, seismic sensors recorded a low-frequency tremor, 1.6 on the Martian scale. It lasted exactly 19 seconds. Then the pulse stopped. The audio signal went silent, and the ground shifted. Vetra's tunneling bot sent one final image before all contact was lost. A door, perfectly round, seamless, embedded in the rock like a coin pressed into clay. Then, it opened. No fire, no alarm, no warning, just a corridor, bathed in soft, non-reflective light. It led downward, gently, as if inviting, as if expecting. Mark whispered, "It's not a tomb." Lynn nodded slowly. "No, it's a threshold." They weren't looking at ruins, they were looking at architecture. The world reacted slowly. News leaked, then spread like fire. Half the planet dismissed it as hoax or propaganda. The other half looked up at the sky, differently. Governments demanded access. Agencies scrambled for control. But it was too late. The signal had been heard. The door had opened. And whoever, or whatever, had built that vault had waited a very long time to be found. There was no grand revelation that day. No alien figure stepped into the light. Only a choice: to descend, to know, to cross the threshold between wonder and fear. Humanity stood at the edge of a question it had asked for millennia. Are we alone? And finally someone, or something, had whispered back, not anymore.